Welcome back. We're meeting again today to work on becoming a little more proficient in our research skills. And today we're going to talk about a third-party product for FamilySearch called Puzzilla. So the first question probably is, what is Puzzilla? Well, it's a hyper-condensed visual family tree view. It's a product that was developed outside of FamilySearch with FamilySearch's permission. That's why it's called a third-party product. Its goal is to show you the big picture of your tree, either the ancestral view of your tree, or in the case of what you're looking at right now, a descendancy for somebody. It does not show the graphics, doesn't show pictures and photos. It doesn't have dates or things like that that are on there. It's just a bunch of linked dots, but the dots all represent in this case, the descendants of the person in the center of the chart, and allows you to see a larger portion of a person's family than you can see in virtually any other product. And so that's what Puzzilla is. Notice how it's spelled. It's spelled with 2 Z's and 2 L's, and it's puzzilla.org. But if you put in Puzzilla.com, you'll still come to the Puzzilla page, because fortunately they own both domains, so that if you don't know which way to go, org or com, it'll get you to where you need to be. Okay, a couple of caveats. The first one is Puzzilla is going to use your tree in FamilySearch. And if the tree in FamilySearch is not accurate, if it has incorrect connections and things like that, then the things you're going to see in Puzzilla are going to be incorrect. So you want to try to make sure that your tree's in as good a shape as you can before you use this product. And the second thing is that you want to use that same care when you're working in Puzzilla and adding people to tree that you would use any other time. You want to make sure that you fully vet the people, that you find as many sources for them as possible, and that you look for duplicates and try to find those hidden duplicates that might be there, because they will all come into play. Okay, this is what the homepage for Puzzilla looks like, whether you do puzzilla.org or puzzilla.com. And on this page, there are some things that will be of help to you. One is a how-to link where you'll find some videos on how to use the program. That's what we're trying to do today. And there are 2 different sign-in boxes. The big box in the middle, which is the primary sign-in box, and then knowing that sometimes people don't pay attention to everything on the page and they go looking where they think they need to go, there's a sign-in in the upper right-hand corner that does the same thing as the big box does. Now, the first time each day that you use this program, you're going to be asked to sign into FamilySearch. And then as soon as you sign into FamilySearch, you're going to be asked to give Puzzilla permission to use your data that's on the tree. That's the way all third-party products work. You have to give permission so that the program can go in and look at your data. And so you want to click OK. If you don't click OK, you click cancel, you're not going to get to use the program. That's just one of the things you have to do. Okay, this is what the basic Puzzilla screen will look like after you've signed in and given permission. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to grow your tree, your pedigree. That's the default. And so it knows who you are. It goes to that record in FamilySearch and develops a tree from it. You're the person that's in the circle at the bottom of the screen. And then the dots and squares that come off of here represent your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, and so on. The red dots represent females. The blue boxes or squares represent male ancestors. In this case, if you're looking at a descendancy, they still will represent males or females. Pink for females, blue for males. Okay, so that's where you're at on this particular tree. The tree itself can be set for anywhere from 0 to 12 generations. The default, I believe, is 6 generations. I've set this one to show 8. You will find as you go to more generations that it becomes hard to see things because you'll clutter the screen up so bad it'll be hard to differentiate individual people from others. It'll all just kind of blend in together. You can change the starting person. Like I said, when you're using this from the start, when you first sign in, it will go to you because it knows who the person is that signed in. But you can change whoever's in that position where the red arrow is by going up here to change ID and putting in any deceased person's ID from tree, and it will start building that person's pedigree. Okay, and this works good because if you're working with patrons, you can go to one of their deceased ancestors, get the ID, sign into the program, change the ID to that person, and you'll be able to study your patron's tree. Now, in addition, it's going to show you the starting person in this case, and it's going to show that it's Bob Givens, because that's one of my alternate sign-ins that I use at FamilySearch. If I had clicked on somebody out in the tree, it would give me the linkage between me and that person. And so you have a way of knowing real easy how to get to the person that you're clicking on. There are 3 filters that come with the free version. The first one is the born under 110 years. That's kind of a gray box. You'll see 2 people have a gray box here, my parents. This screenshot was taken several years ago. And as it is now, my father wouldn't have the gray box because he was born in 1908. And so he's under the 110-year rule. Or he's outside, I should say, the 110-year rule, though my mother is still inside that. But this helps you to know at a glance people that you're not going to be able to do temple work for unless A, you're closely related, or B, you have written permission. Okay, there's a link for, or a filter for died before age 16. Normally, you're not going to see any of those on a pedigree because it's pretty hard for somebody to be under the age of 16, father one of your ancestors, and then die. I did have one show up one time, but what it was somebody had entered bad data and the death date was wrong by decades, and it made the person look like they were under 16 years of age. So normally you're not going to see it here, but you will see them when you're working on descendants. The third free filter is targets, and that's what this is all about. In most cases, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to either find the end-of-line ancestors in our tree that we need to work on, those things that we call brick walls, or if we're working in the descendancies, we want to find dead-end people, people where they don't show spouses or children, because those are the best opportunities for growing the tree, is to see if you can flesh out the related relatives that are found there, if there are any. Okay, so that's what targets are. So now, you're probably thinking, if you've never used it before, this is kind of a funky looking tree. The thing you've got to realize is that you can mouse over the people, and when you mouse over the people, you're going to be able to see who those dots represent. So there's one of the dots on this tree. It happens to be my great-grandmother. If I mouse over her, a little box will show up, and it's going to tell me that that is Charlotte York Carter. It's going to give me her birth and death information, and it's going to give me an opportunity, if I want, to look at her descendants, her ancestors, view her in family tree, or log her, which means to create a record of somebody that I want to come back to later. I can log her so that I remember I want to come back and work on her at a later time. I can also go directly to Find My Past or Ancestry to do research on her if I choose. Okay, that's how the mousing over occurs. Now on this particular screen, we've clicked on targets. And so member targets are dead ends, either brick walls or dead ends on descendancies. In case this is a pedigree chart, these are brick wall people. Actually, most of them weren't, because at this point in the tree, I hadn't worked on it for a while, and there were a bunch of places where people had messed it up and I needed to put it back together right. And most of those red targets went away real quick. They weren't anything I needed to research to get new. I just needed to restore them. But when you're doing targets, you can filter them. You don't have to do everybody on the screen. You can pick a location, like say Pennsylvania. You want to see all the targets that are in Pennsylvania. You type Pennsylvania there, and they will pull up only targets for people that show a birth or a death or burial or marriage in Pennsylvania. I can also set it for a date range. I say I want people born between 1800 and 1850. And if I do that, it will only show me those people. So that's a nice filter on the filter that can be used with targets. Okay, so let's see what happens when we click on a target. So I went to my tree and I picked a brick wall person, Matthew McDowell. He happens to be that green box. When you click on somebody on that pedigree or in the descendancy, their little symbol will turn green. And that way you can see where they're at. And so this tells me I've clicked on Matthew McDowell. Whoops. Okay, I've clicked on Matthew McDowell. We've got his birth and death, and then we have the three filters. And over here, we can see how we get from me back to Matthew. And so from this screen, we can kind of decide what it is we want to do with him. We have those three options. We said descendancy, ancestors, or view in tree. I'm not ready to view him in tree yet, but what I could do is, let's say, I'm not going to try to find his ancestors because right now that's a dead end. But let's see about his descendants. I haven't really looked at his descendants. So I'm going to click on descendants, and that'll bring up a descendant view for Matthew. And you kind of need a little help probably to understand this. And so I drew some rings. Those rings are not found on the normal screen. You're going to have to visualize it yourself. But Matthew is the circle in the middle. There is a ring of dots that come straight off of Matthew, and they form a yellow. I have a yellow circle connecting them. There's four people there, three girls and a boy. Those are his children. Remember, this is showing descendants. Now, the next ring of dots out from those children is a blue circle that I've drawn. That connects a bunch of people that are two generations down from Matthew. That is his grandkids that we know that are in tree. and they do form kind of a circle. The next ring out is marked in red, and those are the great-grandkids. And then the final ring on the very outside, where it ends because it will only show you up to 4 generations, are the great-great-grandchildren of Matthew. And so this is showing you all the descendants of Matthew on one screen, which makes it really nice because you can kind of visualize, you can see places where things end and probably need to be extended, and other places where a lot of work has been done. One other thing, you'll notice there's a yellow line that goes from Matthew to this red dot, then down here to this red dot, and then down here to this blue box. And that's a line that traces back to me. So this is what I kind of call the yellow brick road in here. If your direct ancestry is showing on the descendant view, they will mark it by drawing yellow lines to connect the people. And that helps you to see where in this, what could be a mess of dots, where your particular line is actually found. Okay, and you'll notice that a few of the kids, very few, have little yellow boxes. There's one there. There's one or two up near the top of the screen. And those are the children that died before the age of 16. Now, a person who has no death date showing could be a person that died young, but we don't know. Now, that won't count. It'll only be people that has a death date that's within 16 years of their birth date. Okay, so let's look at this chart and mark targets. Now, the one thing is it will never show targets on that last generation out on the outside edge because it truncates the descendancy at that point because it only wants to show you 4 generations. And so it can't tell whether it cut off the generations or if there were no more generations. So that last generation out, you're not going to get any targets. But on here, you can see there's a lot of people who are targets. Remember, targets are the people that we don't have any more descendants for in this case. No spouse, no children, or anything like that. And so, as you can see, this is a descendancy that probably will need a lot of work. There's going to be a lot of people we're going to want to check. And notice again, like I said, you could also set the targets for location or date range if you wanted. Okay, so let's see what we can do with this screen. I'll go out on that screen and I'll just pick a person. And so I picked this dot out here, which is one of Matthew's grandchildren. Name is John Bond Jenkins, born 1831, died in 1910. So he doesn't have a lot of complete information. He doesn't show any descendants. So it means he doesn't have a wife. He doesn't have any children showing in FamilySearch. And so I went to him on the tree, and we're not going to take you through all the screens. Just know that I went to him on the tree and I found a death certificate for him as a hint. And on that certificate, it named his parents, which verified him, and it named a wife, which I did not have. And so knowing that, I then followed it up by going to the 1880 census, where he was 49 years old. And I was able to find a wife there and 7 children. And so we were able to work over those children. Of course, you're going to want to verify them, vet them, check for duplicates. But when we were done, we had a large family there with very little work to get it. Now, that was using the free version. There is a premium version, and it does cost money. It costs $39 a year, but it provides many extra features. And you don't have to pay for it if you want to use it. If you go to a Family Search Center, you'll be able to sign in and use the premium version on the Family Search Center computers. And so that's one way to use it without having to pay. Also, in talking with the owner of this program, if one person in the family, let's say the father, pays the $39 a year, if he does that, he can allow the other people in his family, his spouse, his children, and their spouses to use this program as if they had paid for it. They will have to sign in using the father's username and password, because that's how the program or how the website knows who has paid. In other words, when you pay, you give them your Family Search credentials, and that's how they keep track of you, whether you're a paid customer or a free customer. So people that want to use it in the family will have to sign in as dad and then use that change ID to get somebody from their particular tree that they want to look at booted up and showing on the screen. But he says it's perfectly okay. It was designed for that to be done that way, just to be a help to people. You might wonder why they charge a fee at all, and that's because they are being charged for computer usage on the web. Every time we do these searches, that takes up some time on the web, and they're the ones that are footing the bill for it. And so they deserve something in return for the expense that they're paying out. Okay, if you use Puzzilla regularly, I would strongly recommend to pay the $39, get the full product, and it's well worth it. I've had it for well over 10 years and just love it. Okay, so let's see what these premium features bring to us. One is ordinances. We can now click on the ordinance button, which turned green, and it's going to mark everybody in this descendancy that's on the screen who has an ordinance to do. It's going to mark them green. And you'll notice that some of them have the little gray boxes on the outside, which means they're inside the 110 years. So people that have the green for ordinances, man, the little gray box, you know, you're going to have issues with those. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to look around and try to find maybe places where there's a real good place to look. And I saw this little group of children of one person here who all showed that they were targets and they were green, which means they have ordinances to do. So I clicked on one, it's Anna Coleman. And so I went to view her in tree because I want to see what the situation is. Excuse me. And so it's kind of unusual to see a large family like that all green. And so, you know, when you see that, you really want to check it. Okay. And as it turned out, all four of those children needed their work done. And a couple of them had spouses, and their work wasn't done either. So you go through the routine of adding some more sources, checking for duplicates, and then you can reserve them. And it's real easy. You found a whole group like that. And it only took a minute to, you know, look at the pedigree or the descendancy here and say, ooh, there's a spot I want to look at. That's what makes this program so good, is it's so easy to quickly find places that you might want to go. Okay, another feature that's in a paid section is called My Changes. It gives you this kind of, I don't know, mauve color. Anyway, what it does is anytime you go to a person and tree and you add a source, you change a date or place, you make any correction, you leave a footprint. And this program can look at the footprints and find if you've ever worked on anybody on the chart that's showing on the screen. And if you've ever left your footprint, it's going to mark it for you. And so this is really great because sometimes you'll be working on a descendancy and it may take you multiple days to research it. Well, you can come back after the first day if you know where it starts, who this starting person is, and regenerate the chart. Click on My Changes, and it's going to show you who you've already worked on. I can see that I've worked this area real heavy. I've worked this little group out here pretty good, and two people over here, two or three people over here. But here's a section I haven't worked on. Here's the section I haven't worked on. And so I know where to go now because it's kept a record for me. I don't even have to write down the information. I really like that My Changes feature. Okay, possible duplicates. Now there's something else that you normally can't find in FamilySearch without going to each and every individual to see if they have a possible duplicate and looking at their home page to see if it says, oh, there's a possible duplicate. This program will search a whole pedigree or a whole descendancy for you. You click possible duplicates, it'll run through there and mark them with a kind of a purple box like this one here. And so there's one right there. That's Norman Lessig. And it says that he has a possible duplicate. You have to remember that they won't always be possible duplicates, really. Sometimes they're incorrectly marked that way, but most of the time they are. So this is a pretty good indicator. Majority of the time you're going to have a merge there that you need to do. The other thing you need to really be careful of is the fact that don't fall into the trap of thinking, well, there's only like 4 people on this screen that are marked as possible duplicates. Everybody else is okay. No. FamilySearch is very non-generous when it comes to marking people as possible duplicates, because in the past they were really ripped by people who would take anything FamilySearch said it might be a possible duplicate, and they would merge it because, hey, FamilySearch said possible duplicate. And they could take a John Smith and a Bill Jones, and they would merge them because, well, FamilySearch said they might be a duplicate. And so FamilySearch has become very more conservative about offering us duplicates that are marked as such. We need to flesh out the others. So don't fall into the trap of thinking if you don't see anything marked possible duplicate, that means there isn't any. That's not true. There could still be more. Okay. So another one is search. It allows you to do a search of the screen for either places or things about birth. Or not places necessarily, just any text. You could do a text search or a date search, a birth date search. So in this case, I have a lot of Pennsylvania ancestry. My mother's family mostly came from Pennsylvania. And so I put in Pennsylvania as the search term, click search, and all my Pennsylvania ancestors are marked there with the kind of off green color box. Now, another way to do it, you can do other kinds of searches. I did another one where I put in the letters KW because from my experience, I feel that most of the people in family tree that start for KW are members of the church or were members of the church. This happened to be the ID starting numbers the day that they dumped all the old membership records into Tree. It used to be that that membership record had to be the one that was kept with the person. Nowadays, you can actually merge it away so it's not as accurate, but it will show you in general where your LDS lines are if you have old LDS families. In this case, it was very accurate on my family, showing me the people in my tree who belong to the church. My mother over here is a convert, and that's why there is nothing out there, because nobody in her ancestry had been a member. And so this can help you to find things in your tree. Now, another one is sources. Now, actually, most people in tree probably have sources, or I can at least say many people in tree have sources. And so the way I use it is a negative search. I'll search for sources, and then I'll look for people that don't have sources. And when I see a situation like, whoops, like here, where there's this group that do not have the little red boxes for sources, I'm going to want to look at that section because that means those people have never been sourced. They also show no parents or spouses. So that's probably a good place to go working. And you can see the hundreds of people in this descendancy. This is a pretty full descendancy. That's a very interesting place to go look in that particular descendancy. Okay, hints is another one. And with the hints, those are things we'd like to know because we're going to want to know who has hints because they're often the people that we can add information to. So if they happen to be an end of the line person and also have hints, like let's say these two people here, that's a good place to go looking because there's a good chance you'll be able to grow the tree there and add some people in. And you can also search for a type of hint. Let's say you want just census records. You can put the word census in the hint type and then click search 10 hints. And that means it'll search up to 10 hints on a person looking for census records. And it will then show you hint boxes on people that have at least one census that can be sourced on them. And so this is another very helpful feature. They also have a thing called new person. I'm not a big fan of this. Will explain it. It's kind of detailed and kind of complex. What they're doing is they're trying to provide you with a way where they can tell you where for sure you can find somebody to add, or at least where they think you can find somebody to add. It requires you to add a Chrome extension to your Chrome browser. It'll be the Puzzilla Chrome extension, and you'll be taken to a link here where you will be able to click on it and add that to your browser. Once that's been done, then you can go over and click on that new person link. It'll bring you to this, and in this case, it told me I got to go back and do that extension first. And once you have the extension and you click on new person, it will search the screen and search every single person and go through their hints and try to find you people in that chart that have a potential new person to add to them. Now, the biggest drawback is you're looking at a significant amount of time. And I'm talking in the range of hour or more. And so if you were going to do this, I would strongly recommend you time it or just before you leave to go to Target or go to Costco and go buy a hot dog and have dinner and do a little shopping and come back, and it might still be running or it might be done by then. Do something like that because you're going to tie your computer up for quite a while. In this case, and it'll show little black boxes where there's a person to be added. And so in this particular case, you'll see a little black box there, and it says that that person, the red dot, is Phoebe Lero Palmer, and there's a hint for the 1910 census, which will add a person to her family, supposedly. Now, it doesn't always work the way you think because it's artificial intelligence. Sometimes it wants to add somebody that's already there. But in this case, it was a new person. Okay, they give you some guidelines. And one of the things they're concerned about is they want to make sure that you don't uh, find too many people using this feature. I personally don't think you will because I haven't seen a lot of people show up, at least in my tree, by using this. It says, be careful, you got to be concerned with the quality of the results. And you might want to consider sharing instead of finding these people and reserving them all. Find them, put them in tree, just let them stay there, let somebody else reserve them, and things like that. Okay, those are the free or the pay features. Now I'd like to go through a couple of demonstrations and then we'll let you go. It's kind of fun to see these demonstrations to see how much you can get from one hint, one idea. Okay, in starting, you're going to want to consider where do you want to start? Well, you're going to want to go back in your tree if you're looking especially, well, let's put it this way. If you're doing your ancestry, you're just going to go to a brick wall person and start working from there. That's pretty easy. If you're going to do descent, you'd want to go back probably into the 1700s to before your family joined the church and pick an ancestor there who is at least a generation or so back beyond the first member of the church in that line and start with them looking at their descendants because there'll be more chances for you to find descendants from them than descendants from people who had already joined the church that need to be added and things like that. Okay, choose a line that might be less researched. You can check to see about number of sources, numbers of pictures, stories, and all those little things off of the different versions of the fan chart to give you a feel for sections of your tree that might be less worked. If you can find sections like that, that would probably be the best place to go. If you can find lines in the United States or other places where there are good records, that would be another clue for this would be a good place to do our research. And if you're a researcher in another country, then find records from that country if you're more comfortable with that. Remember, you can go back further than the initial tree. You can go back to the last generation on the tree, click on the person, and then say, let me see that person's ancestors. And then make sure that the tree that is built is accurate, at least up to where you're clicking on it. So you might want to just quickly go through the ancestry back to the person that you click on to make sure that there's nothing really messed up about the tree, at least in that one section. Okay, so choose a person in the tree. You hover over the person you want and you click on it. So in this case, I clicked on Daniel Sands and said, let's see descendants. And when I looked at this, there are all kinds of holes and places here that would be different places I could work. There's a lot of people who are targets, if I would click on targets, but I chose to come down here where I saw this little line here where that's a only child of this person. This is the only child of that person, and this is the only child of that person. I thought 4 generations of only children, I doubt it. And so I decided to be my starting person here. And as you can see from the pop-up screen, that's a Michael Sands born in 1799. So I said, okay, let's go over into Family Tree and see this family, because that's how we do our work. We use this to find where we want to go. Then we go over into Tree. So here's the family. Michael has a wife, Ann Hoffman, and one child in Tree, a Hannah, born in 1842. Now, it says she lives to 1916, so she's not a child that just dies right away. If she's living to 1916, that means if she's born in 1842, she's going to be alive on the 1850 census. I don't know when Michael and Ann die. I hope it's after 1850, but I'm going to try to find Hannah. And so I'm just going to go to search on the Michael's homepage because I'm on Michael's page and click on Family Search. And let's see if we can find an 1850 census. So I do that, and the very top source is the 1850 census for Michael. How do I know it's my Michael? Well, the birth date's the right date. The residence is in Berks County, and that's the county that they seem to live in. Here's the members of the family, and there appears to be a whole bunch. And the very first one listed is Ann, and that's his wife's first name. And usually the first other person on the census, other than the head of household, which would be Michael, is usually the spouse. And so that makes sense, and that's probably my family. So I said, let's look at the transcription. I look at this transcription and I immediately say, oh my gosh, this could be a gold mine. Here's Michael's information. Here's Ann. And if I go down in here, here's Hannah, age 8. So I know I've got my family. The trouble is there are 12 supposed children there. Now, I can't guarantee they're all children. That's the problem with the 1850 census. They don't give relationships. You assume they're children, but this family's an older family. It's possible some of those younger kids are actually grandchildren. We don't know. And so my goal at this point is I'm not going to put everybody in Tree. I'm going to put them in as I research. So the first thing I want to do is figure out which one of these kids do I want to add. We know Hannah's already in Tree. I'm going to add one more right now and check it out. And so I look at them and I say, okay, I'm going to ignore the girls for a while because the girls are problematic. No offense, ladies, but you know what I'm talking about. Women's names change when they marry, and that can cause problems in researching them. And just to make things quick and simple and get started, let's pick a guy. And so I looked at him and I said, oh, I like the name Washington. It's not George Washington. It appears to be just plain old Washington Sands. So let's go look for this guy. He's 18 in 1850, so he's born about 1832. And so I know he's living in Pennsylvania, And I know that Ancestry has Pennsylvania death certificates that start in 1906. So taking a chance, I said, okay, let's go over to Ancestry and look at that 1850 census so that I can see the suggested records for Washington based on that 1850 census. And sure enough, the very first one was his death certificate. He happened to live till 1914. How do I know this is my Washington? Well, the birth date seems to fit. His father's Michael, his mother's Ann Huffman. Hoffman, that sounds fine. So I know that he lives long. I know that he is, in fact, a child of Michael. I still don't know if he has any spouse or children. So I want to find him in a family. So I say, okay, let's go looking for him on a census. Since he lived in 1914, I can go all the way up to 1910 and find him on censuses. So the first one I looked for in FamilySearch was the 1880. And sure enough, he shows up and he has a wife, Elizabeth, and a servant and no children. So I thought, okay. They're in their 40s. Maybe they just never had kids. So I went searching further. I found him on the 1900 census. And Elizabeth said, that's a great census because it asks the woman, how many children have you ever had? How many are living? And Elizabeth said, I've never had any children. So that kind of settled that this is a family that I've already found everybody I'm going to find. Now, I did glance over at the trees in Ancestry and found out that Elizabeth's last name supposedly is Sheeler. So since it works so well with her husband, I went and said, okay, let's see if I can find a death certificate for her. And sure enough, Elizabeth Sands Sheeler had a death certificate. I love this because the death certificate started in 1906, and she managed to hang on till the 7th of March, 1906, so that she could have a death certificate. I really appreciated that. But seriously, I did appreciate that it was there because it gives me her parents' names, Henry Sheeler, Nancy Robinson, and the family member that supplied the information was no less than Washington Sands. So everything was verified. So at this point, I'm basically done with my research. What do I need to do? I need to source that 1850 census and put Michael and Ann's in that record, source them, source Washington and source Hannah, leave the other kids out for the time being. Go to the 1880 census and source Washington and Elizabeth, source Washington's death certificate and Elizabeth's death certificate, run some duplicate searches, and if I'm happy, I'm ready to go. And so I turn to doing the temple work. But first, I want to just point out I didn't have to do a lot. And what I found by doing that little bit was when I was ready to do the temple work, I had neglected to even look to see if the parents were done. The parents weren't done. Michael and Ann had no work done. And I was able to go to one place, find a grave, and sure enough, they were in there. Their stones gave full birth and death information, and I was able to flesh them out. It's not essential to try to have complete information on people, but the more complete you are, the better the records are. And so this family with Michael and Ann and their dozen children are ultimately going to supply me with a lot of work. What did I get so far? Well, this is the family group sheet for them at this point. And you can see that none of them have any work done. Michael and Ann, Washington and Hannah. And in fact, Elizabeth Sheeler needed to be done too. Ironically, Hannah has a husband, and I believe he was already done, but her work had never been done. And so I had a nice group of family members to do. Over time, this is what we've gotten. That was back probably around 2018 or so. By 2022, the descendancy on the left was generated, and I generated today a descendancy for this family, and you can see how it's growing. It still has a lot to go. There are still a lot of dead ends there that need to be fleshed out, but it just continues to grow with time. Okay, notice that I didn't really use many records. You don't have to be a master researcher. I used the records at FamilySearch. I went to Ancestry.com and I used their public tree just for one little glance and basically used their records by going to a record that I found at FamilySearch, find it at Ancestry, and look at the possible records that are attached to that at Ancestry. I did a glance at Find a Grave, and if I had wanted to, I could have done a search in Google. And the easiest search is to take the husband and wife, put their names in quotation marks, and run a search. And I didn't even use that in this case, but I can usually do all my research with just that much researching. Okay, let's try one other one. We have the descent of James Sands. Okay, here's James, born back in 1770. This is his descendancy, and I've worked on part of this in the past, and that includes the Michael line. And so what I want to do is remove Michael from here. And so here's James hidden here. Michael is his son. I click on Michael, and then I go down here in the little box on the left, and there's a hide show tree link. If I click on hide and show, right now, Michael's descendancy is showing. If I click on it, it erases his descendancy, which is the bulk of the people on the screen. I want to see who else I can work on. So I click on that. Now all Michael gets is a little plus sign. I can go back over on the left-hand side and go down, and I can click on it and bring it back in if I want. But this shows me the other children of James. And so I asked, who has hints? And most all of them had hints, a majority did. And so with this reduced chart, I can easily pick out who I want to work with. A couple of the people have ordinances to do, one down here and one right here. Most of the people have the hints, the orange boxes. I chose to work with William D. Sands, and that's where he is right there, because it said he lived to age 81, but he shows no family. So I say click and view on his family. Or see him in tree. And so here he is with no spouse, no kids, but he has 6 hints. So I said, okay, let's look at all those hints. And the third one down had this nice page with it. And I know when I see those, and we're talking about death and burials, that this is probably a transcription from a cemetery. And those are often like a gold, piece of gold. So I say, I want to look at that record. And because oftentimes the family members are shown together, and these books are generated by the person walking down the row, telling you what's on each stone in the order that they're found on the row. They're not alphabetized or anything like that. And so here's William with the year of birth and the year of death that was known. He happened to be a member of the Union Army during the Civil War. It says his stone has a marker and a flag. And it's got an Emma Sands, who's about the same age, tied to him. And the assumption would be, because they're about the same age, that Emma's probably his wife. We don't know that yet, but that gives us a hint for something to look for. Notice also the family above them is a Bowman family. Mary Bowman, wife of John Bowman. She was actually Mary Fisher. Okay, just kind of log that in the back of your brain. So I go to the 1870 census and I find William D. Sands living in Berks County, where I would expect to see him. And he's living in a Bowman home. Mary Bowman. Sound familiar? And there's William D. And here's Emma. And lo and behold, they got married in the month of May in 1870. The census was dated the 15th of August, and they married in May, so they had been married for about 3 months. From this, though you don't see relationships on 1870, it's a fair assumption to think that Emma is probably a sister to Sally and a daughter to Mary. But we don't know yet. So we go a little further and we're going to source that. And so it tells me that Emma Sands wasn't a possible duplicate. So I could go ahead and create this record. And so I did. And as soon as I did, I started getting some new hints on William, including the 1880 census. And it establishes that Emma is in fact Mary Bowman's daughter, because Mary is living in their home and she's the mother-in-law. So that means she's Emma's mother. And William and Emma have 2 children, a Mary and a William, that were born after the 1870 census and before the 1880. I also verified it further with the next hint down, which is a marriage record. And it's a marriage record for William D. Sands and Emma Bowman. Now see, it didn't take any real work, just attaching hints, and I've got a family started here. Okay. Lastly, there's one other feature that's a hidden feature, a secret feature. If you buy the paid version, you'll be able to use, and that's by hitting the keyboard characters Control and I, you'll be able to toggle the screen view to do some different things. Okay, one of them is the names of the people. If I have a descendancy on the screen like this, I hit Control I, it's going to show me the names of everybody. Now that's a nice, very small chart. You can imagine what it would look like if you had a big, massive descendancy with a couple of thousand names on it. It's not going to work. You're going to have trouble reading it. But it does work if you keep things simple. You can do Control I again the next time. It will put the birth and death dates for each person. Takes away the name, but it'll give you birth and death dates. I hit Control-I again. It'll tell me the birthplaces for everybody. And then if I hit Control-I again, it'll take me back to the normal view. So that's just an extra little feature that most people don't know about. And I thank the owner of the program for teaching this to me. Okay, so in conclusion, if you want to do descendancy research or even check out your ancestry, definitely consider using Puzzilla. This is a program that was developed to make our searching as easy as possible. And as you can see here, it really does work well. Okay, if you liked what you saw today, please click on the like button. That helps to get the word out about our product. Also subscribe if you would like to hear more, because when you subscribe, every time I post a new video, it will send you a notice and you'll know there's a new video out, or it'll put it in your feed. Also, notice on our homepage or our channel on YouTube that there is a link here for a blog. In our blog, it will have the links for these videos, which is something you really don't need if you've already found the channel, the YouTube channel. But in addition, they're going to provide you with a link to a PDF document of the slides for each presentation, so that if you want to review the slides, you'll be able to. You can download them. You could take them and use them to teach from, do whatever you want with them. Okay, but they're there for your benefit. We've enjoyed being with you today. We'll be back again in a couple of weeks, and we'll learn something else that's new about FamilySearch. So have a good day, and we'll be seeing you soon.